biggest mistake that I see people make is not having a decision-making process. I don't know what the medication is. The problem is people want to accumulate so much money and then they have a bunch of dough and they're in the no-go years. Like, I don't want to, they'll forget about it. The importance of everything talks about the importance of doing comprehensive, holistic planning.
John Link is an investment advisor representative of Royal Fund Management LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. This content is for information purpose only and does not constitute personalized investment advice. Full disclosure will be provided at the end of this podcast. Welcome to the Entrepreneurs Logbook Podcast. I'm your host, Zachary. You can find me on social at It's Zach B. In each episode, I bring on experts from various industries for you to learn about their strategies and insights driving extra business growth. Today, we're joined by John Link, president of Link Financial and Link Wealth Management, an independent fiduciary retirement and financial planning practice, helping individuals at or near retirement turn their savings into a sustainable, lifelong income plan. But what kind of makes John interesting is that he didn't actually start in the finance space. He started at 10 years old with a paper route, worked his way through various jobs in his teen, and eventually spent 23 years in the grocery industry, becoming the youngest store manager in his company at just 23 years old, overseeing millions in revenue and hundreds of employees. And after nearly 2.5 decades in that world, he made a deliberate pivot toward a career where he could build something meaningful, and the decision turned into a career of over 3 decades in financial services, where he's built a solid team, has experience as a public speaker, and he also has a book coming pretty soon here. But John, it's great to have you on the show. Welcome aboard here.
Thank you, Zach. I appreciate the opportunity to be on. Great.
I love that. I would tell you that we've had a lot of business owners, but on the finance side of things, it's not something that we talk a lot about on. And I feel it's probably a very important component that not everyone thinks about on like a day-to-day basis. But one of the things I'd be kind of curious, and I ask this to everyone that comes on this show, if you had to like restart, I guess, your career or maybe like the current practice that you have, knowing everything that you know today, what's maybe the one thing that you feel you would do differently?
Right. Well, fortunately, I started in the grocery business at age 16 through age 39. So I started from the ground up, worked in all the departments, I learned everything from the ground up, and internalized that, was able to use it to my advantage over time. So that was a kind of a learn as you go type process. When I got out of that business and at age 39, which is pretty old to restart stuff, at age 39 and got into financial services for the first time. Now that was a wake-up call because that was completely different. I mean, I'm pretty good with math, but that's a whole different kind of math. So from the grocery business. So the first thing I did, and I would not change this, the first thing I did was I got every designation I could get. I went to every class, every course, wherever it was in the country. I learned as much as I possibly could, as quickly as I could, because when you think about having people's money, their finances as a part of your responsibility, you want to know stuff. And so I did that. And I think that was really a good start. If I would change one thing, though, I would probably spend more money on marketing right out of the chute. But that's a push-pull because, you have to know what you're talking about if you're going to talk to a lot of people or anyone for that matter. So it's kind of a tough thing to do. But I think one of the main things is spending money and marketing. And I like to say, if you're not willing to risk everything, you'll never really have anything.
Oh, I like that. And I feel like it's a push and pull in a way where, again, you have to do things to learn from them. And then you only afterwards learn that maybe I should have done it this way. But if I didn't do it the way I did it, I wouldn't have understood and learned these things here. So everyone always has a different answer, but I'm always curious to hear like what their answer is here. But interesting. So you would just go back, full in, spend more marketing, invest more like yourself, from what I could understand.
I would, except it's that spending money is scary that you don't have. I mean, I came out of that business with, I transitioned and I didn't have a lot of money for anything. So then you have to borrow some money, and that's the importance of interest rates too. When they talk about interest rates coming up and down, interest rates, is the cost of doing running growing,
Yeah.
starting a business,
Mm-hmm.
and borrowing money is important. So that all comes into
Yeah.
play. But I would try to get in front of more people earlier than I was able to without the marketing expense.
That makes sense. And I guess like shifting gears a little bit, because I want to talk about like the practice a little bit. So for people who aren't really like familiar with like how fiduciary practice actually works, like day to day, can you like walk us through like what that process looks like when someone comes to you, they're looking for help, they're looking for some guidance? What does like working with your practice actually look like from a client perspective?
Right. So probably good to start with the definition of what's a fiduciary, right? Fiduciary means you're legally responsible and liable for doing what's in the best interest of the client.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's another standard out there in the financial world called suitability. So someone might be under the standard of suitability and be able to provide a product to someone and be just fine, but it might not be in their best interest, which means that a
Mm-hmm.
fiduciary couldn't use that particular product or shouldn't use that particular product because there could be something cheaper, more efficient, maybe at the individual fiduciary or the firm's detriment, might not make
Mm-hmm.
as much money, but still there's a requirement for the fiduciary to do that. So the best interest standard means process. It's like when you go to the doctor and you go, "Hey doc, I got a cough. What do you think?" And the doc says, "Well, I got some red pills and I got some blue pills. I used the red pills on the last guy, so I'll use some blue pills this time." Well, that might not work out, right? I mean, you would expect the doctor to ask a lot of questions, run some tests,
Right.
and see what the problem is before using some kind of medication for the patient. It's the same with
Yeah.
us. I don't know what the medication is till I know what the problem is, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
differentiates a fiduciary from someone who. Now, I'm not saying bad things about other advisors
Mm-hmm.
because there are a lot of good advisors out there and good
Yeah.
advisors that probably are not under the fiduciary standard. So I'm not really saying that, but from our practice, and you ask, what do we do? We start with a very definable and strong process to help people understand who we are because we're not for everyone,
Yeah.
right? So we want to determine if we have a good fit or not, and that is process driven.
I love that because I feel like a lot of people are just gonna take on like anyone, like everyone, then they're just gonna take a one size fit all approach, and then that might
And
not
if one
work
size
too
fits
well.
all, it doesn't fit anyone very well, does it?
No.
And so the idea then is not really the amount of money that someone has. I think sometimes people get really kind of intimidated. They don't have enough money to go talk to a financial advisor and things like that. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that becomes problematic for the individual. We don't
Yeah.
have, believe it or not, we don't have an account minimum here at our firm. Bear in mind, we don't have an account maximum either. So we have people with millions and millions and millions of dollars. And we have people that have been referred in by parents or grandparents or whomever
Yeah.
that are in their 20s that are starting to invest right here, right now, and
Mm-hmm.
taking advantage of what Albert Einstein called the eighth wonder of the world, which is compound interest.
Yeah. I think that's been an interesting learning. I'm obviously young. I mean, I don't want to say you're old by any means here, but
You
I've
can
learned that
say
the
that. You
compound.
can say the truth. It's the way it is, right?
But yeah, I mean, that's what I've learned. I mean, just historically looking at like, even there's like some simple calculator online, like compound interest, and you can see like, hey, if I just stick to this one thing, I do it consistently, I invest a little bit of money, it's going to like compound like in, 30, 40 years, I'll have a little nice like nest egg that I can use for like retirement or anything like that. And
You
so
sure
I'm
can.
a big believer in the compound interest model here. And I mean, it also applies in like anything that you do. Like it's 1% improvements every single day, whether it's with your personal life, professionally, or anything like that. But in money, I know that's obviously where the concept goes here. But
Right.
one of the things when we talk about like rate of return, there's like a lot of noise in like the financial world about it. Like everyone wants like the best performing portfolio, which is not necessarily wrong by any means, but I get the sense that someone approaching retirement, that might actually be like the wrong thing for them to focus on. Like maybe there's another approach that they should be looking at. What should people really be like thinking about instead when they're at that point?
We like to put things in buckets. And so when we're talking about money, you're going to need some money right now to live on, right? So you need some like cash reserves, emergency reserves, savings, checking, things like that.
Mm.
And then you're going to need some money in the not too distant future. That
Yeah.
money can be invested in a way that's not too aggressive. You're going to need some money way on down the line. Like if you retire at 60 or 65, heck, you may have 30 years of time left, and you need to have some portion of your money growing, and rate of return is important at that point. But
Yeah.
when you look back at your point that you're making, we consider cash flow a big component of a person's retirement program and process. Like how
Mhm.
much cash flow do we need? How much cash flow
Yeah.
can we generate from a particular investment or a particular item where we're not worried about what the rate of return is?
Mhm.
We might be worried about the rate of return for something that's going to grow for 10, 15, 20 years. Sure.
Yeah.
Depending again on the person's time horizon, risk tolerance, risk appetite, risk capacity, things like that.
Yeah.
But the important thing about income in retirement is to have it. It's not to worry about. You can't. It's kind of like you can't have it both ways. A big giant rate of return and generating, a cash cow,
Mhm.
cash flow for you to live on from day to day. So again, it's part of the process. It's a part
Yeah.
of the buckets. It's a part of the grouping of when do we need how much money, when do we need what, how much for how long before we get to the next bucket.
Yeah. Because I feel like a lot of people, they're gonna default, okay, I just need as much money as possible. Like, well, let's make sure my portfolio like performs like very well, but they're not factoring like, hey, maybe I'm 75, getting a little bit close to like the 80, I'm in retirement. Hopefully, you never know, but maybe I should be using my capital to like enjoy life. I mean, I'm 75, 60, whichever it is, and maybe I shouldn't be looking like, oh, I want to maximize my portfolio as much as possible, when maybe it's time to like enjoy it, from what I could understand.
Great point, Zach, because again, our process includes thinking about things in kind of time frames. So
Yeah.
we consider when somebody's nearing or beginning retirement the go-go years, right? Where
Okay.
they're wanting to go. They feel, both people, if they're married or together, feel pretty good. So they're ready to go and
Yeah.
travel and cruise or whatever. The next phase might be the slow go years, where they still want to do some stuff, but then maybe not all as much as they were before. Maybe not overseas. Maybe go to Texas or something. And then the no go years, where they're like, nah, I'm done. So the problem is, your point is well made, because the problem is people want to accumulate so much money,
Mhm.
and then they have a bunch of dough and they're in the no-go years. Like, I don't want to, forget about it.
Yeah.
It's not, it's kind of inverse like that. But by the same token, the individual doesn't want to run out of money either, which is where the process comes back in and the plan. And to have, one of the things that we do in our practice, and a part of the process, is to do an expense plan. Now, you might call that a budget, but I've had people tell me, I've never had a budget in my life. I'm not going to have a budget. Okay, fine. We'll call it an expense plan. Call it a refrigerator if you want to. I really don't care what you call it. But we
Yeah.
have to know how much money you're spending now, so we can structure a portfolio and a strategy that makes sense for you for now and in the future.
Yeah. And that's where I like the planning approach, because a lot of people, I mean, hopefully that's not the case, but a lot of people end up doing that like very late on. They're like, oh, I'm 55, maybe it's time to start planning for retirement. But from your perspective, that's maybe like the other way around. Like, you should have maybe
Right.
done a little bit like earlier, from what I could
The
understand.
time, the time to start planning for your retirement is day one of your first job.
Yeah. So you,
That's
you
when you
did that
start.
early, like 10 years old, right? You started planning for retirement?
I had a bunch of dough ready to me when I was 14, and so
Yeah.
I had a lot of money. I had
Yeah.
$800 when I was 14 years old, and
Yeah.
that wasn't in this century, I don't guess, but it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I was able to buy some join a garage band, actually, right?
Mhm.
And I bought an amp and a bass guitar and a microphone. And I was able to join the group because of that, because I had the money.
Yeah.
The one thing I lacked was talent. That was, and I couldn't buy that, but I could buy the other stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can accumulate a lot of money if you start early.
Pretty important components here, the talent side of things. But yeah, and like the compound interest plays a big favor in you. I mean, at 14, if you're put that $800 in like the market for like the next like 6 years or so, you'd have a good amount of dough stock when you get to retirement there.
There's a pretty easy formula to kind of calculate what that looks like. And it is based on rate of return. So it's called the rule of 72. I don't know if you've heard about that or not, but the rule of 72 says you take your rate of return, your interest rate, and divide it into 72. And the result is how many years it will take your money to double. So for example, if you got 6% rate of return on your money, 6 into 72 is 12. Yeah. Right. So at 6%, your money doubles every 12 years. Yeah. Conversely, if you can make 12%, a double digit rate of return, which is pretty high, but still doable, particularly if you're young, 12 into 72 is 6. So it doubles every 6 years. So that's a very simple way to calculate the importance of the time value of money. And to your point earlier about the rate of return, under certain circumstances, in certain situations, where rate of return does need to be maximized.
Yeah. It's all in like a case by case, depending on like where you're at in like your life and like which bucket as well that you should be focusing on here. And we've spoken before, John, like one thing that you mentioned I thought was interesting. We started talking a little bit about like Social Security. And you told me like, hey, I could speak to that for like hours and like hours. And it seems that everyone has a different perspective around what it is. Everyone has a different opinion, but most people don't fully understand the strategy behind it. I'd love to understand, like from you, what are some of the most common mistakes or things that you see people make when it comes to deciding like how much and like when they should look at claiming that?
The biggest mistake that I see people make is not having a decision-making process, which is what we offer people. Because I have clients, and there will be advisors that completely disagree with me on this, which is just fine. I don't view myself as a contrarian, but if I am, sometimes I am, because it's what I think and what I've seen and what I believe. So I've had given people advice for both people to start their Social Security at age 62. So what happens at age 62? You take a reduction. You get like a 30% reduction in your pay from full retirement age, which is age 67. Yeah. And if you wait until 70, from full retirement age until 70, you get an 8% per year bump in that. So think with me on this. So what if you started your Social Security at 62 instead of 70, which you would get the most per month? How many paychecks are you missing between age 62 and age 70? The answer is 96. Yeah. So while the paychecks are smaller, you get more of them. The break-even point on Social Security, if you start taking it at 62, and instead of taking it at age 70, you would have to live to about age 80 or 82 to break even. So go back again and say, what kind of family history do you have? Do you have a family history of some kind of bad disease? How do you feel currently, personally? I mean, are you in good shape? Have you been a smoker? Things like that. So Social Security dies when you do, right? So it's not like your investments that can continue on. So you have to be really, the calculus is one thing, but the reality and how it fits into a plan and where it fits in the process of what you're wanting to do. The reason I suggested people take it at age 62 was because he had gotten laid off early. They weren't quite prepared fundamentally and foundationally with their asset base. So both of them were on Social Security. They weren't really paying any taxes. They did have some Roth IRA income that they could take that doesn't count against the complicated calculus that Social Security requires. So they were able to get what's one of the most expensive things that that you have in your life if you don't work for a big company, health insurance,
Mm,
right? So if you have to go into the marketplace and get health insurance, you want to be on the lower end of the income tier. So
yeah.
if you're on Social Security and Roth IRA income, for example, then you can get the best rate. So that makes some
Mm,
sense for people. Would
yeah.
that make some sense for most people? Probably not.
Yeah.
But again, it's the process. It's going through the process to figure out where it fits in your lifestyle, in your buckets, and the asset base that you have, and your tax situation. Because Social
Yeah.
Security is tax favorable.
Yeah. Again, it's like all depending on like where you're at. And it's really about like figuring out exactly like where you're trying to be. But I like the fact that you mentioned, and I've never thought about that. It's like, hey, you have to think like, okay, I'm old, but do I have any disease? Am I like in shape? Like, do I plan on living to like this age? Like, if not, it's like, okay, historically, I've seen my family typically like 80, like most of them end up passing away. Maybe that we start planning based on that. And I feel like a lot of people don't take that more like strategic approach, like their financial planning, social security and everything, which I think is pretty interesting. And a lot of people
Yeah,
do
the
that.
guy is about 80, 82, 83 years old. That's
Yeah.
kind of it, for the most part. So again, but you're right about the exercise too. And that's a big component of the process is,
Yeah.
um, um, you shouldn't wake up at age 60 or 65 and say, okay, I'm going to start exercising today, right? I'm going to get engaged today with some group. I want to lay around and watch TV all day long because a
Mhm.
successful retirement not always about the money.
Yeah.
It's about a strategy to enjoy something.
Hmm.
And if you don't feel like it, if you're sick or, not really wanting to go do anything,
Yeah.
then why did you go through the process of having all the dough? Some stuff just doesn't add up.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And one of the things I want to go back to something that you mentioned earlier. You mentioned like at like your practice, you guys want to have like a minimum or like a cap in terms of like AUM, not AUM, sorry, but like how much capital they want to bring to like the practice. So you do end up working with a lot of people that you would call more like middle America. So like savers, people who have not worked with an advisor because they don't think that they have like enough money. And from what I could understand, it's a segment that's like often like overlooked by a lot of like the more like larger institutional firms. Why is that? Like, why does it actually cost people when they end up in like the wrong hands?
Yeah, well, I think it's really unfortunate. It really is because I think people um, who work on with their hands maybe or
Yeah.
work in not maybe a big company that had a generous 401k or something like that, and they have been in an income range that has been challenging enough to get
Hmm.
some money put away, much less, seven figures. And
Yeah.
so they're like, well, that guy would never talk to me. And maybe they won't. I don't know. Some people, some advisors do have, seven-figure minimums and some don't. But
Yeah.
I think people get the idea that it's like if I don't have X and define X, depending on which
Hmm.
coast you live on, New York or California or here in Kansas,
Yeah.
X is a different number, right?
Oh
Because
yeah.
it doesn't cost quite as much to live in Kansas City as it does in New York or LA.
Yeah.
So, but still, people just, I think they get intimidated, honestly. It's like, I see the
Hmm.
guy's in a big building, he's got a thing. But I think that's so horrible
Yeah.
that we have somehow made people think that because
Hmm.
at any level, even if you have a lot of money,
Yeah.
or if you don't have a lot of money, it's equally important at every level to have good financial guidance. And everybody goes through our process, by the way. So
Yeah.
how many times have you heard of a professional athlete that made millions of dollars and winds up broke? Or the guy that wins the lottery gets millions of dollars and winds up broke. Why is that? Because he's got
Quite
a
a lot.
friend down the street that says, hey, Joe, do this. This would be great. Do this. This will work
Yeah.
out for you. I'm sure it will. Professional advice is important. And I just think that people in middle America, in middle income America, that maybe don't have quite as much as they hope they would
Hmm.
see a professional as quickly as they can to help
Yeah.
rectify the situation.
Yeah. Because they have like this. It's not lack of education, it's more like awareness that these options are still available to them. Like there are still professionals that will like actually help them And if they take the time like early on to do it at least, then we talked about the compounding rule. It obviously compounds and it's going to help their case in a lot of scenarios here. But yeah, I mean, I've obviously seen like the people like, yeah, minimum 8 figures. I mean, that's obviously more like the higher net worth individuals, but there are still options and people that can obviously support people who are like more middle.
I love that. I love working with people at every level. Frankly, the high net worth, the not high net worth, the younger people, I dig it. The whole thing, it's cool. I mean, it's just fun. It's at this point, it's just fun. And I work every day and I like it because I want to be here. It's not because I have to be here. I want to be here and I want to work with people who want to work with me. But we have that process that holds some people back because like they don't want to do an expense plan or they don't want to go through this process because of whatever. Well, it's okay. Can't work with us, but it's okay that if they don't want to, they can work with somebody else.
Yeah. One thing as we wrap things up, because you've obviously dropped like a lot of like nuggets, like little gold nuggets as I like to call them. We were talking about, I think it was like a week or two ago, you mentioned a book coming out. And that's like one thing I'd love to like touch on here a little bit more about. Not sure if you ended up figuring out exactly the name that you wanted to go through, but we'd love for you to give a little bit of a teaser to the audience with the book here.
Yeah, thanks. The book is, I'm going to title it, and it's in process right now. We're hopefully coming to fruition before too much longer. I call it basically what we've been talking about, the importance of everything. Right? It's like that doctor story that I told in the beginning. The doc, you go see the doc, you got a cough. The doc's going to want to run some tests, and you don't want the doctor to not delve in and figure out what the heck is wrong. So you have to divulge a lot of information. And in our time, our society, right now, sometimes you have to, trust people in order to give that information out. And I understand that part. But in order, the importance of everything talks about the importance of doing comprehensive, holistic planning, where one decision you make on one part of your plan very definitely is going to affect one or two or more of other parts of your plan, like Roth conversions and taxes, like required minimum distribution planning now versus waiting until you have to take it later on down the road, like income and reducing income to avoid Social Security's IRMA tax. I mean, so it all works together. The importance of everything when it comes to financial planning is just that. The whole picture, the holistic approach is what I'm getting at. And hopefully that book will do my thinking justice in there and when we get it done.
I love that. Yeah. I know that there's obviously always a different timeline when it comes to like releasing a book, but I pray for you that it goes out like pretty soon. And what we can do is we can obviously put that in the show notes for anyone that wants to check out the book whenever John's book is fully like released here. And then, I really appreciate you getting on the show here, John. For like anyone that wants to get in touch with you, they're trying to learn more, they're trying to take control of their finances, they're trying to plan for like retirement, or they're just like, hey, John sounds like a cool guy. I want to connect with them. What's kind of the best way to get in touch with you here?
Yeah, you can go to our website, johnlinkcompanies.com, and connect with us through that. No problem. And we will get back with you in post haste. And it's been great to be on your podcast. As a matter of fact, I watched your podcast earlier. You had I forget the guy's name, but you had something text us, I think it was.
Yeah.
That was really interesting. So you must have a lot of really interesting people come on, present company, included.
A lot of different people for sure, all across. I mean, we've had people in like Europe, Mexico, US, Canada, all across the globe. But it's been an interesting one. But I'll tell you, I don't think we've ever had anyone on like the financial planning side of things. So I'm glad that we could bring a different perspective to the conversation and obviously educate people coming on the show here. But yeah, we're going to add like all your information, company you mentioned, johnlinkcompanies.com. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, we're going to put your LinkedIn, all that fun stuff here. And then to your listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, like, leave a review, comment, reach out to John here. And then, until then, keep pushing and we'll see you in the next one.